Rhino, right, I've already made this surface. And to make this surface in Revit would probably prove to be pretty challenging, just because, one, we want to have accuracy with the curve, and two, it's a double curved surface. And Revit sometimes handles it pretty well, sometimes it doesn't. And really out of all this, what you're going to get is what we plan to do with this idea of conceptual massing. Okay, so to get a file from Rhino over to Revit, I'm going to take that file and curve data. So in Rhino, curve data is anything that's a line, right? So we don't want that. So the first thing I'll do in Rhino is do SEL's CRV. You'll see that right there, right? And I can hide that, right? So then I only have surface data that I'm going to export. I'll go to File, Export selected. Down here I'll toggle it, and you'll have a variety of options. I like Rhino because it's the ultimate kind of export tool, import tool, because I can take anything. However, in this case, Revit only really likes SketchUp files, drawing files, and SAT files. And thankfully, Rhino has the SAT function, which is going to be this ACIS solid. So I'll go ahead and take that. I'm going to toggle to my WeGo1 folder. And I'm just going to save that out as. Then you'll get this default type. So generally the default's going to be fine for you. In this case, since it is an Autodesk product, I'm going to go ahead and use Inventor. There might be other cases where you use other ones, but I know since it's an Autodesk product, it's going to handle the Inventor file pretty well. I'll take that over. So then in SketchUp, right, we have the SketchUp file. I can go ahead and I can export that out as a 3D model. Right, and you see a couple different other options. I can do an AutoCAD file, I can do an object file, all of which Rhino will take, but Revit will not take. We know Revit will take a DWG, but in this case we don't have to worry about anything. We'll just go ahead and we'll export and save that as an SKD file. Leave that as tutorial 01. Label that as SketchUp. So then in the Revit environment, right, you'll have this basic opening window scheme. What we'll want to do is we'll actually want to load anything we import, unless it's going to be something for an actual like construction document file. We're going to load it into the conceptual mass. And from this you'll get the idea of why we're using the conceptual mass. It's because I can quickly apply things like walls and window families and things like that quickly to the faces of these objects. So I'll just go into the families, go under the new, and I'll find the mass.rft. The RFT is a family template. The RFA is the actual family itself. Open that. Okay. So generally you'll know you're in the massing environment when you have this grade kind of background. What I like to do in my project files when I'm in any 3D view, I'll set them up to have this gradient background. So just beware when you're doing it. Another key thing is to note when you're in the mass environment, you'll have these two reference planes. You'll have this single level. For this, we don't really have to worry about any of that. Our 00 is going to be here from the past file, so we'll probably expect something to load in right in this area. So all I have to do in Revit is go to Insert, Import CAD. You'll notice that Revit gives you a few options. You have DWGs, which are AutoCAD files. DXF files, again, AutoCAD files. DGN files are anything that's going to come from MicroStation. It's a Bentley product. ACIS files are going to be like your Rhino files that we just exported, and of course SketchUp files. In this case, I'm going to select the Rhino SAT file. Colors, I'm going to preserve my colors. If I were to invert them, blue would go to yellow. My layers, I want to have only the visible layers, because if there's a multitude of things in there, maybe I don't want them, or maybe there's just one specific piece in this giant assembly that I want to take from it. Import units in this case, our Rhino file was set up to be in feet, so I'm going to set my import units to be in feet, so that way we don't have a problem with Revit choosing to do millimeters or things like that. And again, all this is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to have level 1. If there's multiple levels, I could load in at level 2 or 3 or 4. And then you have auto center to center. Click open. And there's my file. I'm going to go ahead and save this out because I'm going to load it into a project file. So I'm going to save as family. I'm going to call it Rhino Surface. And it's going to be, as I said before, now it becomes an RFA file, which means it's an actual family. And then in this case, we're going to try the SketchUp file too, so you can see what happens. So from the big R, I'm going to go to New, Conceptual Mass, and again the RFT file. Open that. And I'm going to go ahead to the same Insert tab, Import CAD. And in this case, I'm going to toggle and make it a SketchUp file. So I'm going to find my SketchUp SKP. And in this, I didn't set up any units in the SketchUp file. So I'm going to do the auto detect, and I can bring those in. And you know, you see here, it brought it in really, really large. So I'll type ZF for zoom full. That gives me to everything. And just as the Rhino file, I have just basic block mass that I can work with. So if I tab over to the Rhino file, it's Control Tab. Should bring up the Rhino file. That'll be my 2D view. Another way to look at what you actually have open in the file is to do WT for window tile. It'll bring up the actual SketchUp file and then the actual Rhino file here. So I didn't pay too much attention to the scaling of these two objects, so that's one thing you would want to make sure you are paying attention to. So I'll just bring both of those into the window. Right, and that's how we bring those into the mass environment. Now you may be asking yourself, okay, what do I do with these actual files? So earlier what I said was we're going to actually apply, you know, curtain wall data or walls to those things. So let's go ahead and make a new project and show you kind of how we utilize conceptual masses. So go to New Project in this case, and a project is like imagine the family as a block in AutoCAD, and the project's like your XREF file. And then we're going to have a master file at the end of the whole tutorial set that controls all the views and everything else. So we're going to hit OK. And you'll know you're in a project file because you come in a 2D view and you'll see these 4 elevation markers. And general 0 to 0 is going to be the intersection of these two objects. So what I'll do is Control Tab over to my Family 4, which I should save out and actually call it the SketchUp mass, since it comes up here. Save that out. Save this family as my SketchUp surface, SketchUp mass. I'll call it. Save. And then up here is the load into project. So I'm going to load that one in. And you'll see that any open documents that I have, it's going to allow me to load those into. So I'm going to load it into my Project 2 file. And then when this video or this dialog box comes up, basically it's saying that by default Revit is assuming you're going to use these masses as an underlay for the actual geometry in the project file. So what it's doing is it's automatically set up to not show those masses because you're using the masses to control the geometry, which we'll see here in a minute. In this case, I'm going to say don't show me this ever again because how we control that and what that basically was saying was if I go to VV, which is my visibility graphics, so I can, by types, display or show things, you'll see that masses is not checked in this particular view. Now this is not global for the project. This is only by view, by view, by view. So in the views themselves, right, ceiling level 1 would still have mass not shown. So I'll have to go through and do that all together. And later on in the tutorial set, we'll learn about view templates. So go ahead and hit apply so I can see that. Now you'll notice I'm trying to place it here. I'm on floor plan level 1 by default. And I can't physically place anything. And that's because for some reason, by default, Revit asks you to put it place on face. So in this case, I'm going to do it place on work plane. And I'm going to click now. Now I can click somewhere. Click, and it says mass contains only mesh geometry, which can't be used to compute mass floors, volume, or surface area. So that's okay for me. I'm just going to go ahead and click close because I'm not trying to create anything out of it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate around in my 3D view. Now I don't have by default in a new project a 3D view set, so what I'll need to do is go to View, 3D View, and I'll select default 3D view. Here's my mass. Mass itself to put on data. So if I go to the wall tool, you'll see this wall by face. Some other things that do it are going to be a roof. I can do a roof by face. I can do a floor by face. Click on a wall. Right. I can do a wall by face. Right, it's going to actually make a wall for me. Let's come back again, do wall by face. Right, so you see in blue it's highlighting those spaces, and it's because we didn't really pay attention to scale that this thing is really, really large. So our 6-inch piece of wall looks like a thin thing. And just to show you how that's working now, if I go ahead and I select my mass and I right click, I can hide that in view. Right, so I can spin around the model. I actually have walls that were then applied to the face of that mass. And the benefit of that is if I come back into my SketchUp model and I were to move my wall, right, I can come into this wall, and since it was applied by face, as I can come later and say I want to update to the moved face if that thing changes. All right, so the one last thing we'll show you is that it also works with a Rhino model. So Control Tab over to our Rhino model. It's our Rhino surface. Go ahead and load that into the project. And then I'm going to place it on work plane by default. And I have my piece. I'll come over to my 3D view. And here in this case I have a bunch of other stuff that I need to hide. So what I'll do is I'll toggle that to be hidden. I'll select everything, and I'll actually use my filter tool to select only my mass. Excuse me, only my walls. I'll hide those as well. Now if I type ZF for zoom full, zoom into the full breadth of that piece. Now for this, I can. What's really nice is I can say, okay, let's make something a little bit more enticing to the eye, other than just a few straight walls. Come into my curtain system. I can select my surface and I can create my system. You'll notice that Revit now takes a flat surface and tries to facet itself out of that. If we wanted to adjust how that came across, I can edit that type and say this is actually a fixed number. And again, I selected my curtain wall, not my surface, to do this. I apply, and it changes that again. And then in the properties of that curtain wall system, then I can say, okay, I want 12 by 12. And each time it gets more and more faceted, right? So I get closer to what it was before. So if I were to change the curvature, I could update my curtain wall system to that curvature. And that's how we're utilizing other programs to load in masses. The next thing we'll do is we'll actually go through the conceptual tools to actually make Revit masses within the Revit environment.